now live. Welcome to uh, Medicine Monday. I'm your host, the Freedom Doctor, and we have some amazing guests this week. This week we have the amazing, I'll introduce them from the direction I see. We have the amazing Keith Freeman, who's an amazing literary scholar of trauma, and the amazing Dr. Kanika Bell, who is the owner of an amazing therapy um, therapy practice. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, the amazing defense attorney who specializes in defending those who face gender-based violence, attorney Aisha McCoy Lewis. And before we move on, I want to do something special. I want to acknowledge the life of Dante Wright, a 20-year-old Black man in Minnesota that was killed by police sometime this week. Dante, your life matters to us, and we lift your name. And here on Medicine Mondays and all the platforms that the Freedom Doctors own, all Black lives matter. So with that said, we got the healers and the inspirers with us today, and we are talking on the topic of processing difficult feelings. So with that, I want to jump right in. To my panelists, I want to say, I've already introduced you, but I want to ask, who are you? And tell me where you're from. What's your background? And let's start there. What's your background as it relates to processing difficult emotions?
Well, I'll go first. I am a licensed psychologist. I am practicing in Atlanta. I went to Spelman College. We are still Spelmaning because we celebrate Founders Day like for a month. So like April 5th through like April 20th or so, we're in Founders Day. I know it says day, it's days for us. So I went to Spelman College. I majored in psychology, and then I went to Auburn University and got subsequent degrees in clinical psych. And I also do forensic psychology. So most of my, a good part of my career is helping people process difficult emotions as a psychologist and therapist. But I'm also an associate professor at Clark Atlanta University. And you would think that that would be a different job, but a good part of my career at Clark Atlanta, when you are a professor for Black children, a good part of that career is also helping people process difficult feelings. That's just part of being a professor at HBCU. You know, your level of availability for people, you know, that's just part of the HBCU experience.
So. Okay, and Keith, what about you? Where are you from? And why is it important to process difficult emotions for you? And how does that show up in your life?
Okay. Again, my name is Keith Freeman. It's kind of weird hearing you say that because I haven't heard it in some time. But yeah, my name is Keith Freeman, or Erasto. Some of you might know me as Erasto. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up mostly in Decatur, Georgia. I went to Morehouse. Hey. And also went to Georgia State for my graduate degree. I do want to qualify and say that I am not a literary trauma scholar. I was in a grad program and I had to do a master's thesis, and that was the framework that I chose for my topic. I learned a lot, but I'm in no way, I have no claim to that label as in that life of a scholar. But I'm very much interested in what it means to kind of, you know, better understand trauma and work through it with different healing modalities. That is a concern that was, of course, mine then, and one that has stayed with me, you know, since I graduated, but not a scholar, only of life.
Yes.
But what was your second question?
Why is it important to? And this is actually a follow-up question for everybody. Why is it important to process difficult feelings?
Right. Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and answer that now? Okay.
If you want, or if anyone else would like to go ahead and and address that question, they can too. We don't have to. We can go as people feel.
Okay.
I could jump in if you.
I should
Yeah,
come
okay.
right on in.
All right, so I'm originally from Flatbush, Brooklyn. I have a hungry child in the backseat, so she's offering some ambient sound as we make our way to some food, late night food. But yeah, originally from Flatbush, Brooklyn, but I also was raised in different parts of the Caribbean and North Africa before moving back to New York City. While I'm trained as an attorney, really, I view my work really rooted in folklore and in, gathering the tales of the people and being able to, tell them in a way to be able to not only help people understand, community, but also help people understand themselves, help people understand each other. And so, I'm trained as a lawyer. I represent sex workers and people who are accused of being in a sexually engaging, seeing clients or receiving tips in any, in a variety of forms, and who face criminalization. So I have a very niche practice where that's where I focus my work, but my true work is in storytelling. And so I think that's, as we think about, kind of difficult feelings. I mean, that's really what storytelling aims to do, right? How do we approach complex feelings and make them understandable? How can they be received? Even if it ends up being a story that you don't like, but hopefully it can be received in the way that you can understand.
Mm-hmm. And how did you say processing emotions shows up at work for you? Like in what you do as a defense attorney?
So the way I practice is not what they were teaching in law school. I think that the idea of, holding on to people's stories is something that's, trauma specialists, psychologists, social workers, people across disciplines typically discourage that. But I find that I'm able to have greater emotional maturity with each successive client if I'm able to hold on to some of the stories of the earlier clients, right? Because in the telling of each person's story, right, as people, when we present ourselves, right, we end up telling more about what we're facing and what we're experiencing than we aim to, right? And if the people that we're interacting with don't hold on to pieces of our story, then I think a piece of your soul ends up missing out on what you could learn from humanity and learn from the people around you and learn about systems, right? Because I think the best way to learn about how a system impacts people is to be able to hold on to the story of the first person you meet on the job and the 50th person you meet on the job and the 4,000. I've had thousands of clients over the years. Holding on to pieces of their stories help me understand systems. And I think if I understand systems, then I'm better able to address and respond, I think, meaningfully to emotional challenges and not make them more not assign responsibility to emotional challenges that are really structural or systemic oppression, right? Something may seem like it's somebody's emotional challenge, but really, it just may be poverty, right? Maybe right? Maybe they're not struggling with emotion. Maybe they're poor.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Or maybe they're poverty, they're being criminalized because of that poverty, right? Which creates a whole host of I would say very natural and healthy response to oppression, which may sometimes appear to be an individual emotional challenge when it really isn't. It's something that we're collectively going through together.
Yes, it's so completely important to listen to other people so that we can hear where they are, so we can get their story. and help them through that and help them process the feelings that are attached to the story of what they see. That's so important. That's a good segue to the question I want to ask everyone is something that was just said was a phrase that was just said was emotional maturity, right? So in this pandemic, people have been going through it. We've all been going through it in different ways. I know I've had to tap on emotional maturity to define boundaries for myself in the workplace and relationships and moving on from a past relationship. But for you, where does emotional maturity show up for you in processing emotions? And during the pandemic, have you had to process difficult emotions?
Daily.
Right, every day.
Every single day. You know, what I really found is that, you know, what I was calling emotional maturity previously, and I think many of us do this, just Black people in general. What we were calling emotional maturity was like emotional suppression, right? It's considered emotional maturity to be, I've got it all together. I've got to present as a complete and total package. Yes, I've been hit with a whole pandemic, but in the midst of the pandemic, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. I'm going to learn a new language. I'm going to homeschool my children. I'm going to start a business. And if I don't accomplish all of those goals, then I'm not, I mean, honestly, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I found for myself, the most emotionally mature thing to do was to be honest about where I was. Like throughout this pandemic, I have literally had to say, even at work, I don't have it. I don't have it. I'm not going to be able to show up like that because I am going through something. We're in the midst of the backdrop of the pandemic, and then the epidemic and pandemic of racism then rears its head kind of in a more real and visible way because we're all at home watching social media, right? And so then civil rights 2.0 starts up. And I just had to be mature enough to say, you know, after Breonna Taylor's not getting justice, I'm going to have to lay down. You know what I mean? Like, it's just true. You know what I mean? And I think, I'm not sure I was calling that maturity previously. You know what I mean? I thought maturity was to just gather up whatever feelings I was having, stuff them somewhere and show up, right?
Push through,
right? Show up polished, show up on top of things, show up, you know, completely together. And that superwoman, you know, Black woman thing, you know what I mean? And I've really found that that's not the mature way to go. And I think that kind of vulnerability then helps other people. You know what I mean? It helps other people say, wait a minute, you seem like you are okay or not okay with going through something, but it's okay for you to say that you're going through something. And now you freed me. Like, I think every time someone acknowledges their emotions about something, someone else gets free.
Yes.
You know? Like, because feelings buried alive really don't die. They're just buried.
Yes, that's the book too.
Yeah, that's a book too. Yeah.
Aisha, when is it coming out?
Right.
Yeah.
We need to read it.
Pop out.
If I could jump in very quickly too, because you know, this whole topic, this whole conversation about emotional maturity, really I think connects to really all of our answers to the first question about why it's important to process difficult emotions. I mean, I think that is a sign of emotional maturity, accepting that life is not always great. Number one, I would think this year taught us that if we didn't know before, and that there are more than just those good feeling emotions. You might be in pursuit of those things, but sometimes it's a long road to get to a happy feeling. You have to go through some of that difficult, hard to process stuff. That is a sign of maturity, like to be willing to sit with that, you know, and to acknowledge, you know, that is real work. It's hard work, but it's worthwhile work. It's necessary work for your health in all kinds of respects. And that's why it's so important to process those emotions, because they are there. And they don't go away. Like Elder Ife said, they lie in the body and they manifest as all kinds of chronic, you know, instances of stress and disease, and have very real implications on our health at every level. And so if we're going to have any conversation about health in any context, you know, at any level of the body, you can't have it without having it a conversation about those emotions, and that includes maybe 75% of the time, if not more, based on your experience, those hard to process emotions, which I think are also really rich with lessons. Like I think also a part of emotional maturity is getting past like, this is going to sound kind of paradoxical. I don't know if I'm going to make sense, but getting past your feelings about feelings, you know, like I might have certain values.
Yes.
That's good.
Feelings,
Right.
but that doesn't discount the fact that I have them.
I have a feeling.
You're right. You know, just because I might not want to cry, like to cry, does not mean that there is no crying. And crying has it has utility, you know, when we're trying to process emotions. And so like what has been helpful for me and what I think has helped me to increase my emotional maturity is to not, is to see emotions as functional, number one, and to also see engaging my emotions as absolutely vital to whatever it means for me to live my life and tend to my health. It's always going back to that. It's never without that. Yeah.
That's it. Yes.
It's functional. That's a word.
It's
So
functional.
what you're saying is that maybe the aim is not to go towards the good emotion, but to feel what we're feeling, because we can use whatever thing that we're feeling to manifest whatever we want. Because at the end of the day, I think that's the goal, to get to where we want. And you know, whether that's a good feeling, whether that is a so-called difficult feeling, we're still feeling, and we're gonna be all right.
That was
So
a word, Dr. Bolaji. You shouldn't don't rush through that, because that was a word right there.
We had to digest that.
Any emotion, we can take anything that happens to us. Listen, you better spit these gems. You can take any emotion, anything that happens to us, and use it in whatever way we want.
Absolutely.
We can grow from any experience. We just have to decide to. That's a word.
It is.
I can just decide this thing that has happened is either going to grow me or destroy me. I'm choosing growth.
Yes.
Ashe. It's like you just described the ginger root.
Huh?
You just described the ginger root. Like take any piece, literally any piece of it.
Ooh.
And you can go grow it somewhere, make more roots, more ginger roots, make flowers, make edible stuff.
I also was hearing that ginger root metaphor. You can bite any piece of a ginger and it's still good as long as it's fresh. And all the emotions are just source energy for us to again make the kind of life we want. So conditioning, this is a good pivot. We're gonna do a little pivot on the foot here. There's a way that when we're feeling really heavy emotions, right? Some of the reasons why we feel those heavy emotions is because of misperceptions, like seeing the world in a way that's different from what happened, but we have a feeling. So for example, someone I may cross the street and a person says, man, get out the way, you know, and I may hear, oh, like they hate me, no, or I can hear it's like I can hear that this person is very busy and they need to get to somewhere.
Like save your life. They also could be trying to save your behind.
Yes.
Get out of the way because you're in the street.
So I want to ask, just to make that question a bit more clear, how do we sometimes see events wrongly, and how does that impact how we process feelings? Like, do we always, when we go through a thing, see the thing as it is, or do we, or is sometimes the feeling that we experience based off of how we, the story behind the thing happening? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think the tricky thing is that it could be either. Sometimes it could be both, depending on what the situation is. And so, and that's a real tricky one. Like I've found myself, because I spent a lot of time alone, you know, of course, like many people have during this pandemic, in this very room, stewing over things, mulling over things, thinking that I got it. I got the right assessment. Oh, I hit on that feeling. I hit on, oh, why I got it, da, 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 da. And that can be helpful, but after a certain point, I think you have to notice when you are at your limit in terms of like your perspective. Like, I think it's healthy to have like some doubt too, like some healthy doubt about like what your site is. That's kind of like one of the great things about like the humility principle in the community. I think it kind of reinforces like, yes, you have perspective, you know what's going on in your life, but you have blind spots. And like, can you get around people? Are you willing to reach out to people who can be your site? You know, are you even willing to consider that you don't have all the sight, even if it's about you? I think like I think being able to identify that you might have these misperceptions, because that's a really hard thing. That's a really hard thing to do. And then having people, if you have this luxury, people around you that you can trust, you know, to kind of give like your raw, unfiltered feelings and thoughts about a situation and ask them for the objective opinion and sight. I think you have to be willing to be in that kind of a place, even as you're processing a difficult emotion and you think you might be on it and right.
Aisha, what other folks say?
I will say, you know, I really appreciate it, like how you laid that out, Erasto, because, you know, the thing that really resonates to me is the way in which, like, memory is really a net and truth is a tapestry. And you could decide that your truth tapestry is just your own fiber that you're going to contribute to this tapestry. Or you could be in community and, you know, choose your elders, right? Choose your elders, choose your community, choose your elders, and, you know, they can form the tapestry of truth for you. So that way, when you're casting your memory net, whatever ends up landing on, if it really needs to be recast so that you can catch different things and hold on to some different things, I think you're in a better position to be able to do that. Like, you know, memory is tricky. I could be having a beautiful day and then I stub my toe and that's what I remember of it, you know? And not to say that it makes it invalid, you know, not that it doesn't invalidate my pain, it doesn't invalidate my perspective. Yeah, sure, that hurt tremendously. But sometimes you need to be reminded that, you know, pain can be, you know, can and often exist together with joy, pleasure, laughter, leisure, you know, nurturing and nourishment. Like, I think, you know, unfortunately, this society that we live in, you know, kind of teaches us to run away from pain, painful emotions, you know, difficult feelings, suggesting that if there's pain, there's a problem. Not necessarily.
Yes, that's so good. I feel like the people are wanting tools to process difficult emotions, those painful emotions. So I want to put it back to this great panel of healers and inspirers. What are some tools that you use personally to process your difficult feelings?
You know, I think like I said, I think I've gotten to a more emotionally mature place, and rather than kind of stuffing them, ignoring them, or recategorizing them so they are more palatable to others and myself, I've adopted tools of just being comfortable with where I am. When I work with people who are really depressed or really anxious, they're always processing a time other than the present. That's really kind of where depression and anxiety lie. It's regretting what happened, you know, in the past, or it is obsessively worrying about what might happen in the future. And I think what has been helpful for me and helpful to kind of impart that to people that I work with is let's just sit in this moment, right? What's happening right now? What do we feel like right now? Well, I'm really concerned that this is going to happen. Okay, there's anxiety. That's not what's happening now, right? And I think it's easier, just like it's easier to eat like an entire turkey one bite at a time. You wouldn't just try to swallow the whole thing. I think digesting difficult emotions is similar. You know, bite off what you can chew it thoroughly, you know what I mean, swallow that piece. And then we go back and we bite off another piece. What we try and do is either hide the turkey or shove the whole thing in our mouths. We're over it. Like, you are going to get indigestion. You're not going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not going to digest. Just bite off what you can chew today. You know, it may not be all of the pieces. And I think, you know, I think that has been a helpful tool for me to stop and be present, be mindful about what I'm experiencing right now. Not what I have experienced and not what I'm worrying about experiencing, but what am I experiencing right now? And let that just be what it is. And telling the truth to other people. How you doing? I've had better days.
Yeah.
I used to just say fine no matter what. I could have chopped my arm off. How you doing? All right, got another arm here. So, you know, worrying about being burdensome and things to people. So now I tell, you know, now if they're asking, if they're genuinely asking because they're looking, you know, to connect with me in a particular kind of way, why am I lying? You know, I might say, hey, today was really something. It was just a lot. It was a lot on a microcosmic level, and it was a lot in terms of my personal life. It's the truth. And that kind of truth, I think it's the unburdening process then begins, you know. And I find that the clients who struggle the most when I'm, you know, being the psychologist, you know, to these people, these are the people who don't have the community, right? They're the ones who really do struggle the most. They don't have someone else to be like, am I crazy? Am I doing too much? Am I putting too much energy into, you know? And again, you know, like, I keep calling you all by your government names, throwing me off. I just said, right? I think, you know, it doesn't invalidate it, but I do think sometimes some perspective, and that is so helpful to just get. I can work myself in a tizzy. When I say that Kanika Bell can live in her head, you're not even ready. I'm just making up a whole narrative. I'm going in. I'm having an argument with somebody. They're not even there. I'm just going in. I like the whole thing. I'm just making it up. And so you need like another person. Am I doing too much? Yes, sis, you do it. You know, that's not invalidating my experience, but it is bringing me down to experience what is actually happening in reality. So it's a manageable piece that I can digest.
Yes.
And I love what you said, Ife, about that, the being vulnerable and telling the truth, because, you know, this might be different for other people, but like, I am aware that I am someone who I can't, even if I really try, hide where I am emotionally. If I'm heavy, I imagine it's apparent. And so what good does it really do, especially if somebody's asking me, you know, for me to lie when it's a horribly obvious lie? Like, it's clear, you know, just tell the truth. And there is a lot of peace and release and just owning that. Like, we don't want to say much else if we don't want to, or if I don't want to, but like, this is where I am. Like you said, there's a tremendous amount of peace in that. And as far as tools, I also love what you said about like being in the present moment. And I think that's a really great thing, especially what you said, Umitandiwe, in terms of like memory. And like that made me think of like the like how hard it is to identify a feeling. Like, you know, sometimes our vocabulary, our language around it can be like wherever it is, and we don't really have a set framework for like really talking through what it is that we're feeling. But I found that observing and just noticing whatever it is that you feel, irrespective of what you name it, or if you can name it, is tremendously helpful and points you in a direction, even if not necessarily to where you're supposed to go. So like, if you're willing to just kind of submit to that moment, submit to your body and just observe, like, you know, you'll get some information, you know, you'll get some information, but don't rush it. I think that's a kind of important thing for people, you know, to that whole point about being mindful and being with the body. Like, you can't, like, the mind is so quick. It's like, it's ahead of you all the time, and it wants to like assign meaning and, you know, rush to meaning, but like, just sit with it and figure out, like, does this feel uncomfortable? Does this feel good? That's a start. And there's a lot of information in that, even in that, without having to identify it precisely.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good, Keith. I I want to mention the question about anchors. So emotional anchors. I
Okay.
One thing that I heard Dr. Kanika Bell say is that honesty opens that level of connection to oneself where you you are feeling what's there and also allowing people to see within you. And so the energy, as you're being honest, is still flowing. And so I'm asking, how do you get your energy to flow? How do you get your feelings to flow? For me, I use sound to flow, like literally. I'm I'm a person who's very sensitive, but I use sound to go deeper to that emotional terrain for myself to go in, where I can clearly see what is happening, and I can get ahead of myself, and I can see what's actually happening, just in myself, right? Um, I so I want to ask, do you use some type of anchor to kind of get at that difficult feeling for yourself, or if not, what do you do?
Water is my anchor.
Water, yes.
Air is my anchor.
Use it in like oh, air is yours. So yeah, I even use it. I mean, my favorite thing, of course, would be to like go and to a body of water and kind of have, but even in a quick moment, just drinking some, you know what I mean, or just taking a shower, um, can kind of center me a bit and help me to be clear about where I am in a moment. And it really does, it settles me too. It's like both, it's both the thing that allows me to process emotions, but it's also the thing that heals for me.
Mm,
When I'm, you know, if I'm in like a difficult, intense conversation with somebody, I purposefully like keep water near and try not to respond without drinking it. You know, like letting that when they talk, don't have something to say right away. You know what I mean? Like, you know, right on the end of what they're saying. Let me drink this water, literally like kind of process then what your emotions are in this moment and how I'm responding so that I don't respond out of just pure, you know what I mean? Just the rawness. Let me process this emotion before it injures someone. You know what I mean? And I think that's how I use it. But that works for me, you know, like Tandiwe said, air works for her. I think everybody has to kind of find their thing.
yes.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. I follow somebody on Twitter. I can't remember who it is, but they mentioned something about like one way that they use water to manage their anxiety, and they kind of do like a little mind trick, I guess, where like if they're having a fit of anxiety in their body, you know, rather than like maybe panicking or trying to figure out like what's going on, they tell themselves, "I need water," and then they take the sip of water. And you know, per their testimony, it did have, like what you said, a calming effect. But if nothing else, you know, it was a way of nourishing the body in that moment. And it could have been the case that water was in some way needed, you know, as a way of kind of calming the anxiety. Um, I use the breath that way. Um, Listen, I'm like, I feel like I don't have to recommend anything but the breath to people. And I would not recommend anything before I say breathe, because it is that tremendous of a tool that we have, you know, to just breathe, and you know, it'll do what it's supposed to do depending on what you need. Like, it's always amazing how um you know, you could be tired, lethargic, you can have like mental fog, and you can breathe deeply, that can kind of give you some alertness. Or like you can be um hyper aroused, and you can breathe and it'll calm you down. You know, if you just engage with that breath, it'll settle you, or it'll shift things in your body in the ways that you need in that moment. um and I would say that that's the thing that you would want to do before anything else, or
Yeah.
sometimes while doing other things. Just breathe deeply, engage your breath, and allow your breath to help you to connect more deeply with your body in that moment.
Yes, Keith just said, if you engage with your breath and you hold it, things will shift. That's such a powerful observation. Because it's true. I'm telling you that definitely works for me too. So in the last 10 to 15 minutes, I really want to help the people get free from the past. I want to help people get free from the past because the past is really sometimes the domino, so to speak, of those difficult emotions that people feel. So I want to jump into this by asking you, as it relates to the past, how do we move past our triggers that cause difficult feelings? And I want to start there.
I feel like I always speak first.
Moving things to scale. Moving things to their appropriate scale for the moment is so crucial, right? Like, I think that, like I said earlier, right? You know, memory is a net, and you know, you just need to be recasting it. You know, different times, different places. Things that I've had to do is, you know, visit some trauma that I've faced in my childhood and, you know, my adult as well, and see who are those who bore witness to that, and what can I ask them of their perspective, and you know, can I help them? Can they help me shift my memory? Or if that person's not available anymore, right? Because there are some early memories that involve elders that are now ancestors, right? What I'm doing instead is I'm having my own conversation with them, and in a moment of vulnerability, one of the things that I live with is I dissociate frequently, right? And rather than having feelings about that, wanting to say, oh, there's something wrong with me, like I hate struggling with dissociation, you know, instead I could say, hey, well, can I engage it? Can I access dissociation and, you know, see if I could create a new memory, right? Some of that may sound weird on paper, but again, knowing just how malleable memory is, I'm really grateful for this little superpower that I have, right? Where I get to literally, you know, create a different dimension around something that is, you know, that was once very, very painful and maybe paralyzing, and now instead it can just be a painful memory, and it's like, yeah, that sucks, and I've created other memories.
Yeah.
That's so good. Thank you.
Like I think I would say forgiveness is how we can get kind of how we can become unchained in some ways to the past. And I'm going to qualify what I'm saying, right? Because I do think what many people think is required, if you've been seriously injured, abused by somebody, right, in your childhood or adulthood life, people hear that and think, I've got to forgive that person, right? No, I know that sounds terrible. Right? That's not what I'm saying. Because that's not actually who you're mad at. In a subconscious way, you are mad at yourself. You have taken on some blame. That burden that you're carrying related to that thing that happened. That's why we're so invested in other people's apologies to us. Not because that thing is so healing when people apologize, not because that apology is going to be sincere, and not because it's miraculously going to make whatever happened go away. We want you to take some of this burden back. Because maybe if you apologize, I can let go of the guilt I've been having around whatever this thing was that happened. Even things that happen, even something that happened 2-3 years old. What we really uncover is you have guilt about whatever this trauma is, right? And so I think you don't need the other person. Does that make sense? Like forgiveness is a personal journey. You know, when people are like, I need to get closure. You get closure whenever you get ready. You don't need the person. Somebody died before I got closure. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Because you can get closure on a situation, a painful past situation, whenever that time, you know, whenever you are ready to embrace that kind of healing. It's it's a radical way of looking at it, right? Because I do think we think that our emotions and our pain kind of exists either in the places, the spaces, the people that contributed to its occurrence, right? I had a painful occurrence in this city, so if I move from this city, I'll be better. I had a painful occurrence in this relationship. Let me get away from this toxic person and then I'll be better, right? But when the reality is that the thing that's creating the pain, you just put it in your backpack and you just move it with it, right? And so at some point, you have to then say, I forgive myself. I'm gonna let this go. I'm gonna let this go. I really hope people are not here. I'm not saying you forgive this person or this place per se. The forgiveness is actually an internal working thing. And I think that is I think it's contributing to a large part of people's kind of like their painful, kind of like this, the long standing, when people are just in pain for years and years, it's because they haven't resolved that yet. But they can resolve that without making peace with that person, without, traveling to that place. It's an internal thing. And I think once we can get control of that, for myself, I literally was saying out loud, I'm about to take this back. You can't have it. You can't have it. Stress, abuse, pain, whatever the things that I had been going through, you can't own the rest of my life. You cannot.
Yeah.
You cannot have it.
What I really love about that, is like, even if it were true that it is more effective, right, a way to move through forgiveness, to do it with the other person. Like, I think you mentioned, like, for so many people, that's not even really, they don't even have access to that person. They could have passed.
Right.
That person might not want anything to do with them. It could be literally unsafe to be around that person. And so, like, by that logic, then what do? Does that mean that you forfeit forgiveness as a possibility? No, you don't. You could still do that work. And I love what you said about like having to return to yourself. Like, even if you have to in your processing, return to the site or the person, like, it is, you do that work in your bedroom, sans everybody else. Like, you're doing that. That's your work. And I think that's a really profound, hard revelation in truth, though. And it also goes back to that emotional maturity thing. Like, if you're not gonna grab at it, then how else will you get that? If you won't fight tooth and nail for it, it's hard work, but it's worthwhile to do that. And again, going back to
say you're not mature too. I think it's like emotional maturity and be like, I'm not feeling mature right now. I think that's
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, you know what? I don't have the maturity, so I'm not ready. I mean, that's okay too.
That is okay. And that's owning it too. That's owning it.
And that is maturity.
I believe in that person. I believe that person who says that is going to get there, because they have the ability to kind of stand in that truth. That's a hard thing to say too, because there's all kinds of embarrassment that might kind of come, shame and guilty feelings people might throw at you, from even saying that. But like, that's more real than a lot of people might be about where they are. So,
That's
yeah.
And I'm gonna answer my own question. So, like, for me, how people can get past their triggers, which is the thing that is promoting those difficult feelings, is by repurposing their pain and renaming the pain. So when we go through things, right, that imprint is there. Like, for instance, I know people, I'm talking about me. I know people, who have an imprint of being, so I'm a survivor of emotional abuse. And there's a way that for people who are survivors of any type of abuse, we learn that we are somehow broken because of what happened to us. That if the thing happened to us, that we must have in some way been the cause of that thing. And instead of believing that narrative, one of the ways I think people can get around that trigger is to rename what happened. So whatever happened to you, that thing, even though it's painful, what purpose did it have? If a person is, if a person calls you a word you didn't like, what were they really saying? What can that word also mean? You know, are you arrogant or are you powerful, and or does your light shine and everybody needs some of that light? Are you ugly, or does your beauty shine so brightly it causes the world to change and to look at yourself as something that is literally shifting because of who and what you represent? So we can recreate the purpose of the pain to situate ourselves into a new life of being. And for me, that is how I'm getting free. Because you can't change what happened to you. You can't change what happened. You cannot change what happened. Even death does not change it, right? Because you still will feel it. Even moving to a new city won't change it. You have to go back and say, hey, that happened and that hurt my feelings, but this thing is also the door opener for me in other ways. That I'm sensitive, that I'm compassionate because I've been hurt. In fact, the pain that we go through as Black people in particular, we're empathic people. We can pick up on people's pain because we know pain like the back of our hands, right? So that's the power of going through stuff. And I want to just ask y'all this one last question. So of all the questions that were asked, do you have anything else that you would like to offer to our audience? And then with that, we'll wrap this up.
What you said was so powerful just now. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, you just like drop these things and you're just like, and next we'll talk. And I'm like, I'm sorry, pause. Write that on a stone tablet. What is going on right? You just talked about repurposing your pain. Come on.
Right?
What? Take that thing, just like you repurpose things in your house, take this desk that's sitting there in the way and make it into something that is usable for you, sir. That's just, I'm sorry, I'm getting my whole Holy Ghost off what you just said. That is, I mean,
futures.
Revolutionary.
And I like that doesn't like romanticize it or like minimize it. It's just kind of like, that's just what you, I mean, what else you gonna do? You know? You gotta live your life, you know?
That's just, I'm just so open off of that. Like, what if we did that? What if we literally bowed to our opponent? You know what I'm saying? And said, okay, here you are. You know what I mean? And there's a role that you have, you know, in my life. You know, when I look over things that have happened just personally in my life, you know, are these marks against who I am? Are they made me like this extra gangster? You know what I mean? Like, am I just amazing because I'm a cancer survivor? I'm divorced because I'm awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if I thought about those things in that light rather than thinking about, I mean, just that repurposing. That's the thing.
That's good.
I'm going to be talking to all my clients about that. I'll cite you.
I'm about to use that with a client tomorrow.
Listen.
Hello.
I'm sure I'll pick up doing
and not tonight because we're not doing work tonight, but tomorrow.
Right.
I share. Oh. So where can we find you at on social media? Or if you don't use social media, how can we get in contact with you?
I have social media handles and I don't know what they are.
So
I don't manage them. The other people in my office manage them. I know that sounds so terrible. Let me look for them. I'm gonna find them.
That means you a boss. You the boss.
Right.
Hello.
They manage it for
right. I have other when I tell you.
Yes.
I can be reached at Aisha 1908 on Twitter. AISHA 1908 on Twitter for the old people, on Instagram for the younger people. On TikTok, I think it's 19Isha8 or something like that. That reveals my age. I'm like, what is my TikTok number?
On the show notes, for those who are listening live and will listen in recording, we'll have their contact information as they see fit and to decide how they want to be contacted. So we should do that like that. I want to thank all my listeners out there. I hope you are getting your healing today. This is the Freedom Doctor with Medicine Monday. Let's get free, y'all. We wanna thank the wonderful panelists we had today, Dr. Kanika Bell, attorney Aisha Lewis-Mccoy, and the great brother Keith Freeman. We want to thank them. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And we out.
Thank you,
Thank you
Freedom
so
Doctor.
much, Dr. Balaji, Freedom Doctor. Thank you so much. I love y'all. Y'all are
Love you.
amazing. I can't wait to hug you.
I know, and love to the kids on both ends.
Yes.
Both
Thank
of
you.
y'all.
Yes. Get home
Yes.
safely.
And to the
Much
cat,
love.
Freedom Doctor.
Yes, and much love to your future Spelmanite.
Right.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.
All right, see y'all.
Good night.
Bye-bye. I enjoyed you guys.
I enjoyed you all too.